Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we are not just talking about a test. We're talking about the gatekeeper, the final hurdle.
The final boss.
The final boss, yeah. That's the perfect way to put it. It's the one thing that stands between a pharmacy student who has spent, what, 4-6 years in this academic pressure cooker and actually being able to do the job they've trained for.
And paid for a lot.
And paid a lot for, yes. We are talking about the NAPLX.
The North American Pharmacist Licensure Examination.
That's the one.
Yeah.
And looking at this stack of research we have, I mean, we've got the official candidate bulletins from the NABP. We have breakdowns of the exam blueprints, and then you have the, the student forums, which are just full of panic.
Oh, the forums are a whole other level of anxiety.
Right. And then the tactical guides from places like UWorld RX Prep and High Yield Med Reviews. It's just so clear that this is not an exam in the traditional sense. It's an endurance event.
It really is the final boss. I keep coming back to that analogy because it fits so perfectly. You've played the game. You've grinded through the levels, P1, P2, P3. You've survived rotations, and now you're locked in a room.
For 6 hours.
For 6 hours. And the stakes are, well, they're completely binary. You pass, you are a licensed healthcare provider ready to start your career. You fail, and you're a graduate with a lot of student debt and no license to practice.
Exactly. And I think it's so important to set the stage here, because if you're listening to this, you are probably right in the thick of it. You're likely staring down the barrel of a 2026 test date. You don't need us to tell you it's important.
No, you feel that importance in your bones.
What we need to do today is decode how to beat it, because the game has fundamentally changed.
It really has. It's not the same test it was even a few years ago.
We're talking about the structural changes that really hit in May of 2025. This is not the exam your preceptor took 5 years ago. It's not even the same exam that the class just before you took.
Exactly. And that's where so much of the danger is, right? Is relying on that legacy advice. You hear people say, oh, just memorize the top 200 drugs and you'll be fine.
Right.
That kind of advice will get you failed in 2026, period. The NABP, the National Association of Boards of Pharmacy, they've completely overhauled the blueprint. It's now called the content outline.
So the mission for this deep dive is really specific. We're not here to lecture you on pharmacology. You have amazing professors for that.
Hopefully.
We are here to deconstruct the exam itself. We want to understand the mechanics, the traps, the psychology of it, and the specific tactical shifts you need to make to handle this new format. We want to move you from being a passive student who's just hoping for the best
to a tactical operator. We need to turn you into a test-taking machine because honestly, the knowledge you have from pharmacy school, that's maybe half the battle. The other half is all strategy.
Okay, so let's start with the physical reality of this beast, the anatomy, if you will. Because when you read the bulletin, you see numbers on a page. But when you're actually sitting in that chair, those numbers become like physical pain.
6 hours. That's the headline number. But I want you to really, truly think about what 6 hours of intense cognitive load feels like.
It's a marathon. It's not a sprint.
It is a marathon. And during that marathon, you have 225 questions. That's just the raw volume. But there's a psychological twist built right into that number from the very beginning.
You're talking about the ghost questions.
I am. The ghosts. So of those 225 questions you'll answer, only 200 of them actually count toward your score.
Okay.
The other 25 are what they call pretest or experimental questions. These are questions that the NABP is basically field testing. They want to see if they're statistically valid to be used on future exams.
But, and this is the part that I think would just completely mess with my head, they don't tell you which ones they are.
No. They are completely indistinguishable from the real questions. So you could be on question 15, you're in a good rhythm, feeling confident, and then bam, question 16 is about some obscure monoclonal antibody for a rare genetic condition you have literally never heard of. It looks like it's written in another language.
And the immediate reaction for a high-achieving typo pharmacy student is pure panic. I didn't study this. I'm supposed to miss this lecture. Oh my God, I'm failing.
Exactly. And that is the trap. That question might be a ghost. It might not count for anything. But if you let it rattle you, if you waste 5 minutes just staring at it, or worse, if you carry that anxiety with you into questions 17, 18, and 19.
Now you're failing the real questions.
Now you're getting real questions wrong because of a ghost.
So the strategy there has to be some kind of, I don't know, emotional compartmentalization.
It has to be. You have to treat every single question as if it's real. Give it your best shot. And then, and this is the most critical part, amnesia, the second you hit that next button, that question no longer exists. It never happened.
That's easier said than done, but I get it. And that brings us to another one of these brutal logistical rules, the no U-turn rule.
Ah, yeah.
This one fundamentally changes how you approach a test. Most of us, we grew up taking exams where you skip the hard ones and come back to them at the end.
We were literally taught that strategy. Do the easy ones first, build your confidence, bank some points, then circle back to the tough stuff.
You cannot do that on the
You
NAPLEX.
cannot. It is a linear, fixed-form exam. Once you submit an answer, it is gone forever.
Yeah.
You can't flag it, you can't review it, you can't change it. It's locked in.
That just sounds terrifyingly final.
It induces a very specific type of decision fatigue. Think about it. You have to be decisive 225 times in a row with no safety net. You can't say, I'll think about that one. You have to commit.
And that constant pressure to commit over 6 hours.
It drains your willpower. It's a real, tangible resource. By hour 4 or 5, you just want to click anything to make the screen change. You're tired of making decisions.
And that's where the careless errors creep in. That's where people fail. They run out of decision juice.
Precisely. And one other quick technical point. Unlike, say, the NCLEX for nurses, this is not an adaptive test.
What does that mean exactly?
That means the test doesn't get harder if you get a question right or easier if you get one wrong. It's a fixed set of questions that was generated for you based on the blueprint. So you can't try to game the difficulty level. You just have to plow through whatever it gives you.
Okay, let's talk about the barrier to entry for a second. Just getting in the door. We saw that story about Brandon Dyson in the research, which I think is a cautionary tale everyone needs to hear.
Oh, it is. It's a harsh, harsh reality check. The NABP is unbelievably strict about your identification. The name on your authorization to test letter, your ATT, has to match your government-issued ID.
And when you say exactly, you mean?
I mean every middle name, every hyphen, every space. Perfectly. Yeah. The story goes that he had his middle name on one document but not the other, or maybe it was just an initial versus the full name. A tiny mismatch. And the people at the Pearson VUE Testing Center turned him away.
I can't even imagine the stress. You've studied for months. You're amped up on caffeine and anxiety. You show up ready to fight the final boss, and the bouncer won't even let you into the arena.
And you forfeit your fee. Let's be clear about that. That's a $520 exam fee plus the $100 application fee.
So it's a $620 mistake.
It's an expensive typo.
Yeah.
So honestly, the very first test question on the NAPLEX is, can you follow the administrative instructions to register properly? If you fail that part, you don't even get to see the clinical questions.
Okay, so let's assume you've gotten your ID right. You've accepted the brutal linear format. You're mentally prepared for the ghost questions. Now, let's get into the meat of it, the blueprint, this content outline that launched in May 2025. What's the big picture shift here?
The big shift is from testing knowledge to testing competency. And the absolute king of that shift is the dominance of what they call Domain 3.
I'm looking at the chart from the NABP right here, Domain 3. Person-centered assessment and treatment planning.
That's full.
Wow, it's 40% of the exam.
40%. That is nearly half the entire test dedicated to this one area.
That's huge.
It is. And in the old days, you might get a lot of questions that were, pure recall. What is the mechanism of action of an ACE inhibitor? Or which of these drugs is a beta blocker?
Standard flashcard stuff.
Right. You could just memorize your way through a lot of that. Domain 3 is not flashcard stuff. Domain 3 is. Here is Mrs. Jones. She's 65 years old. Here is her list of 6 current medications. Here are her latest lab values. Look, her creatinine is climbing. Her potassium is high. She's presenting today with a new complaint. What do you do?
So it requires synthesis. It's not enough to know the facts in isolation.
Not at all.
You have to know the pharmacology, sure.
Yeah.
But you also have to know the pharmacokinetics, the drug interactions, the drug-disease interactions, the current clinical guidelines. And then you have to put all of those pieces together in real time for that specific patient.
Exactly. It's designed to mimic the actual job of a pharmacist. The question is no longer just what does this drug do? It's how do we treat this patient right now with all their complexities? And that is where students who just memorize facts get absolutely crushed.
Can we walk through a more concrete example?
Yeah.
Like, what does a tough Domain 3 question look like that might trip someone up?
Sure, absolutely. Let's take an infectious disease scenario, since that's a common one. A simple old-style recall question would be, what is the primary coverage of vancomycin? And you'd just say MRSA, great, you get a point.
Okay.
A Domain 3 question gives you a patient profile, a patient with a confirmed MRSA bloodstream infection. But the profile also shows you their renal function. Let's say that their creatinine clearance is down to 25 millimol, which is quite poor. And maybe they're also on another nephrotoxic drug like amikacin for something else. The question will then ask for the most appropriate therapeutic regimen.
So the answer isn't just start vancomycin.
Right. If you just see MRSA and your brain screams vancomycin and you click that answer, you're probably wrong. The correct answer is likely vancomycin at this specific renally adjusted dose and frequency with a plan for therapeutic drug monitoring.
Or maybe vancomycin is the wrong choice altogether.
Or maybe that's the trick. Maybe the best answer is do not use vancomycin due to severe renal impairment and concomitant nephrotoxins. Switch to linezolid. You have to integrate the lab data and the other meds with the primary diagnosis. If you don't, you fail the question. And in the real world, you could potentially harm the patient.
That's a massive, massive distinction. It means your entire study strategy can't be based on making lists and flashcards. You have to be constantly working through clinical cases.
You have to be thinking like a clinician from day one of your studying. That's why they call it person-centered. It's not drug-centered.
Okay, so that's the 40% monster.
Oh.
Then we have domain 1 and domain 2, which are about 25% each. Let's start with domain 1, foundational knowledge.
Right. This is kind of your classic pharmacy school material. It's your pharmacology, your pharmacokinetics, your pharmaceutics, and the math. We definitely need to put a big pin in the math because that is another huge, huge failure point for many people.
We will absolutely come back to the math. And domain 2 is medication use process. What does that cover?
Think of this as the operational side of pharmacy: dispensing, compounding, and overall medication safety. This is where you'll get questions about sterile compounding rules like USP 797 or handling hazardous drugs under USP 800.
That sounds a little dry.
It can be, but you have to remember, pharmacy is fundamentally a safety profession. The NABP cares deeply that you know how to prepare an IV bag without contaminating it, or how to handle chemotherapy drugs without exposing yourself or your colleagues. These are core competencies.
And then you have the two so-called minor domains, professional practice and pharmacy management, at 5% each.
Right, and it's so tempting to just blow those off. It's only 5%.
But that's a mistake.
It's the classic death by 1,000 cuts. If you completely ignore the 5% sections, you're essentially starting the exam with a 10-point handicap. You need those points. Questions about basic ethics or federal law or managing inventory, those should be free throws. You cannot afford to miss your free throws on an exam this hard.
Let's talk a bit more about this clinical trend. The sources all seem to agree that the exam is becoming more and more scenario-based. Does that mean we're seeing fewer of those standalone one-off questions?
Yes, definitely. You're seeing more and more of what they call patient profiles. It's designed to look like a mini electronic medical record.
So it's not just a paragraph of text.
No, you'll see tabs at the top, History, allergies, medications, lab results, and you have to click through these tabs to find the information you need to answer the question.
Which I imagine is another potential time sink.
It's a huge time sink if you're not strategic. If your method is to open the patient case and meticulously read every single line of their history from top to bottom before you even know what you're looking for, you are wasting precious minutes.
You might read their entire history of a broken ankle from 1998.
And then you scroll down, and the actual question is about their current cholesterol medication. And you've just wasted a minute of your life on irrelevant information.
So a key strategy point right here for these questions: read the question first.
Always. Without fail, scroll to the bottom of the case, read the actual question stem. What is being asked? Okay, they want to know if the statin dose is appropriate for this patient. Now I know exactly what to look for. I'm going to click on the Labs tab and find their lipid panel, and I'm going to click on the Meds tab to check their current regimen. I can completely ignore the broken ankle.
That filtering process seems critical, not just for accuracy, but for speed.
It's everything for time management.
I want to pivot now to the why people fail section. Because despite having a PharmD, despite years of study, people do fail this exam. And looking at the breakdowns from various sources, it's almost never because they're, for lack of a better word, dumb.
It is almost never a lack of intelligence. It is almost always a lack of strategy, a lack of stamina, or a flaw in the preparation method.
Okay, let's run through the 5 big pitfalls we identified from the research. Pitfall number 1, lack of stamina. We've touched on this, but how bad does the cognitive decline get in the 6-hour test?
It's like the bonk in marathon running. It's a real physiological phenomenon. Your brain is an organ. It runs on glucose. After 4 or 5 hours of intense, unbroken concentration, your executive function starts to degrade.
And what did that look like in practice?
It looks like making careless errors. You read the word hyperkalemia, which means high potassium, but your tired brain processes it as hypokalemia, low potassium. You absolutely know the difference. You've known it for years, but your brain is fatigued and it shortcuts the reading process. You pick the answer for low potassium and you don't even realize you made a mistake.
That is genuinely terrifying
Yeah.
because you walk out of the exam thinking you nailed that quotient.
Exactly. You had no idea you even misread it. And that's why endurance training, doing full lengths or at least half-length practice exams is completely non-negotiable. You have to train your brain to maintain focus for that long, just like a runner trains their legs.
Okay, pitfall number 2, anxiety, the freeze.
This is also physiological. When you panic, your body releases cortisol. You go into fight or flight mode. And when that happens, your brain's priority list changes. Priority number 1 becomes survival, not remembering the mechanism of action of cephalosporins.
So you literally lose access to your own memories.
That's what it feels like. The information is in there, but the pathway to retrieve it is blocked by stress hormones. It's that horrible feeling of, I know this, but I can't get to it.
Pitfall number 3,
Yeah.
inefficient preparation. For me, this feels like the biggest one, the whole passive versus active learning problem.
This is, I think, the most common trap that smart students fall into. They spend hours and hours studying, they rewatch lecture videos, they reread the RX prep book, they highlight sentences.
They feel productive. I spent 8 hours in the library today.
Right. But did you actually build any new neural pathways? Watching a video is passive. It's easy. Your brain enjoys it because it's low effort. But the exam does not test your ability to recognize information. It tests your ability to retrieve it.
You have to pull the information out of your brain, not just let it wash over your brain.
The swimming analogy we found is perfect here. You can watch videos of Michael Phelps swimming for 100 hours. You could memorize his exact stroke count per lap. But if you have never practiced swimming yourself and you jump into the deep end of the pool, you will drown.
So in this analogy, getting in the pool and doing practice questions.
It's doing thousands of practice questions. It's forcing your brain to try and answer a question without looking at your notes first. That moment of struggle, that feeling of, ugh, I know this, what is it? That is the moment learning happens. That is where the pathway is built and strengthened. If you just passively read the answer, you short-circuit that whole process.
Which leads right into pitfall number 4, memorization over comprehension.
There are two sides of the same coin. This goes right back to the domain 3 issue we talked about. If your entire study method was to make flashcards that say drug A is for disease B, you're going to fail when the exam gives you a patient with disease B who also has complication C.
Because complication C might be a contraindication for drug A.
Precisely. You need to know the why. Why is drug A contraindicated in renal failure? What is the actual mechanism? If you understand the underlying mechanism, you can often deduce the correct answer, even if you've forgotten the specific isolated fact. Comprehension is flexible, pure memorization is brittle.
And the final one, pitfall number 5, avoiding your weak areas.
Oh, this is just human nature, isn't it? If you're really good at cardiology, you love doing cardiology practice questions, it feels great to get a 90% score. It reinforces that you're smart.
Right, you get that little dopamine hit.
You do, but if you're terrified of oncology or HIV or biostatistics, you avoid those topics. You tell yourself, oh, I'll get to it later. I'll focus on my strengths for now.
But on an exam like the NAPLEX later, eventually becomes too late.
The exam has a sixth sense for your weaknesses. It will find them. Murphy's Law of Testing says that if you are weak in HIV, you are guaranteed to get 5 incredibly difficult HIV questions in a row. You have to eat the frog. You have to tackle the subjects you hate the most first when you have the most energy.
Okay, let's circle back and put that pin in the math. Domain 1, pharmaceutical calculations.
Yeah.
Why is this such a specific and deadly point of failure?
Because it's completely unforgiving. In a clinical question, you might be able to use your judgment, eliminate a couple of clearly wrong answers, and make an educated guess between the remaining 2.
You have a 50-50 shot.
Right. In a calculation question, it's often a blank box where you have to type in the number. There is no partial credit. Or, if it is multiple choice, the wrong answers, the distractors, are diabolically chosen.
What do you mean by that?
The test writers know every common mistake a student can make. So if the question requires you to calculate a dose based on a patient's weight and you forget to convert their weight from pounds to kilograms, one of the multiple choice options will be the exact wrong number you get from making that mistake. It's sitting there waiting for you. It looks right, it feels right, and it's 100% wrong.
That is just evil.
It's rigorous. And the types of math, it's not advanced calculus, it's mostly arithmetic. But it's high stakes, multi-step arithmetic. You have to do total parenteral nutrition, or TPN, calculations, where you're balancing dextrose, amino acids, lipids, electrolytes, all at once.
Flow rates, I imagine.
Flow rates, yes. Drips per minute. Allegations. Mill equivalents.
Yeah.
And the one that always trips people up, biostatistics.
Us, biostats. Number needed to treat, absolute risk reduction.
Exactly. The formulas all look kind of similar, but their meanings are vastly different. And the questions are usually embedded in a long, wordy paragraph describing a clinical study. A study was conducted with 500 patients in the treatment group and 500 in the placebo group. You have to be able to extract the right numbers, build the little 2x2 table, and then run the correct formula. It just takes time.
So what's the recommended strategy? The advice from all the experts seems to be daily math.
Yes, not cramming. 30 minutes a day. Every single day. For months. Treat it like practicing scales on a piano or shooting free throws. It has to become muscle memory.
Why is that so important?
Because on exam day, when you're stressed and your cortisol is high, you don't want to be spending precious cognitive energy trying to remember how to set up a ratio and proportion. You want your hand to just do it automatically so your brain can focus on the bigger clinical problem.
Okay, one more hurdle before we get to the toolkit.
Okay.
The brand generic problem. This seems so fundamental,
Right.
but every single source mentions it as a major stumbling block.
It is the ultimate gatekeeper to answering a question. The exam uses brand names and generic names interchangeably, and often it will only use the brand name. So if the question asks about a potential side effect of Keppra, and you only studied its generic name, levetiracetam,
You're dead in the water. You literally cannot even begin to answer the question.
you are locked out. It's like the question is in a language you don't speak. So you have to be bilingual.
You have to speak both brand and generic fluently.
Fluently, especially for the top 200 or top 300 drugs. And this is especially true for combination products. HIV drugs are notorious for this. You'll see a brand name like Biktarvy or Triamec, and you have to know instantly that it's a combination of 3 different generic drugs, and you have to know what those 3 drugs are.
Okay, so this is a huge challenge. Let's start building the study toolkit. We've established that passive reading and watching videos is not enough. What is the gold standard for active preparation?
It's all about the question banks, the Q banks. The big names that come up over and over are UWorld RX Prep, PNN, which is past NAPLEX, now TrueLearn, High Yield Med
So
Review.
does it really matter which one you use?
The consensus is that UWorld RX Prep is probably the gold standard right now, mainly because their user interface looks almost identical to the real NAPLEX exam. So you're not just practicing questions, you're getting comfortable with the visuals, the layout, the calculator. It reduces the strangeness of the test day environment.
But the tool is only as good as how you use it.
Exactly. The platform matters less than the method, and the best method is what we've been calling the Olympic swimmer strategy.
Okay, break that down for me.
It means you do a block of questions. Let's say you do a timed block of 50 questions. Then you must spend more time meticulously reviewing that block than you did actually taking it.
More time. Why?
Because you need to read the full explanation for every single question, not just the ones you got wrong.
Even the ones you got right. That feels like it could be a waste of time. I got it right. I know this stuff. Let's move on.
No, that's a huge mistake. First of all, did you get it right because you truly knew it? Or did you make a lucky guess between 2 options? You need to be honest with yourself. But more importantly, even if you knew it cold, you must read the rationales for why the other answer choices were wrong.
Ah, I see.
That's where the deep learning happens. Understand why answer B was the wrong choice. Maybe answer B would have been the correct answer if the patient's renal function was normal or if they didn't have a sulfa allergy. You're mining that one question for 4 or 5 different clinical pearls.
So one question from a QBank isn't just one piece of information. It's potentially 4 or 5.
If you do it right, yes. If you just look at your final score, oh, I got a 65% and then move on to the next block, you are wasting the most valuable part of the resource.
So where do flashcards fit into this active learning model?
Flashcards are for the things that require brute force memorization. They're perfect for brand generic names, for normal lab value ranges, for specific must-know doses for narrow therapeutic index drugs like lithium or digoxin.
And the key is using them with spaced repetition.
Yes, it's a well-established principle from cognitive science. If you review a piece of information at increasing intervals, so you review a card today, then again in 2 days, then in 5 days, then in 2 weeks, you systematically interrupt the brain's natural forgetting curve.
There are apps for them.
Tons of them. Anki's a popular one, Brainscape, and many of the Q banks like UWorld have their own built-in spaced repetition flashcard systems. It is infinitely more efficient for long-term memory than just cramming a stack of cards the night before.
And what about this teach-back method we read about?
I love this one. This is for the really complex concepts, the things you can't just put on a flashcard. If you're struggling to really understand, say, the renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system or the clotting cascade, try to explain it out loud.
To who?
To a rubber duck on your desk. To your dog. To an empty room. It doesn't matter. The act of verbalizing it forces your brain to organize the information in a logical sequence. Okay, so first, angiotensinogen is released from the liver, then renin from the kidney converts it to.
And if you can say it simply and clearly, you probably own it.
Exactly. And if you stumble, if you get to a part where you're like, wait, what happens next? Then you've just identified your precise knowledge gap. You know exactly what you need to go back and review.
All right, let's fast forward. It's game day.
Yeah.
You've done thousands of QBank questions. You've done your daily math. You're sitting in the testing center. The clock starts. What is the tactical approach to actually managing those 6 hours?
Okay, so we already covered rule #1 for patient cases, which is always read the question first.
Right. Don't get lost in the chart.
Rule #2 is all about pacing. On average, you have about 1.5 minutes per question. That's about 90 seconds.
But as we said, a math question might take way longer.
A math question might take you 3, even 4 minutes, which means you have to bank time on the easier, straightforward recall questions. If a question asks, what is the antidote for acetaminophen overdose? And you know instantly that it's N-acetylcysteine, you should click it in 10 seconds and move on. Do not sit there and second-guess yourself. You need to save those extra 80 seconds for the biostats problem that's coming later.
What about breaks? I know there are scheduled breaks, but the clock keeps ticking, right?
This is a critical point. There are 2 optional scheduled breaks where the exam clock does stop.
So that the clock actually stops for those.
Yes. And you absolutely, positively must take them.
Even if you feel like you're in the zone and you don't want to break your rhythm?
Especially if you think you're in the zone, I promise you're not as in the zone as you think you are. Your brain is fading whether you feel it or not. You need to get up, leave the testing room, walk around, stretch your legs, drink some water, and eat a quick sugar source, a granola bar, a piece of fruit. Get some glucose back to your brain.
It's a hard reset. It breaks that long, slow slope of fatigue.
It does. I would bet that the students who try to be heroes and power through all 6 hours without a break are the ones making those catastrophic misreading errors in the final hour of the exam.
Okay, now for the dreaded moment. The art of guessing. You're staring at a question, you've read it twice, you have absolutely no idea. What do you do?
First, take a deep breath and do a quick panic check. Could this be one of the ghost questions? Maybe. Don't let it destroy your confidence. Second, try to eliminate. Can you rule out any answer choices that are obviously laughably wrong? This patient has a bacterial infection. This drug is an antifungal. Okay, that one's out.
Try to narrow the field.
If you can get it down to a 50-50 choice, just pick the one your gut leans towards, and this is key. Move on.
Do not sit there for 5 minutes agonizing over it.
Never, ever do that. Because those 5 minutes you waste on a question you're probably going to get wrong anyway are 5 minutes you just stole from the next 3 or 4 questions that you might have actually known the answers to. It's just bad resource management. You're trading potential correct answers for a guaranteed wrong one.
Let's talk about the pre-NAPLEX, the official practice test from the NABP. Is it worth the money?
It is the single best predictor of success on the actual exam, period. End of story. Yes, it costs money. I think it's around $75, but it's worth every penny because it uses actual retired questions from the real NABP question vault.
So the wording, the style, the difficulty, it's the real deal.
It's as close as you can possibly get. The wording is identical. The difficulty is calibrated. It's the most realistic simulation you can have.
And the scoring is a good predictor.
It's the best predictor. They give you a score range, and the advice is pretty clear. If you take the pre-NAPLEX 2 or 3 weeks before your test date and you score, say, a 65 or 70, you should not take the real exam.
That is very hard advice for someone to hear. They've got their date scheduled. They've told their family. They just want to get it over with.
I know, but listen to the math on this. Postponing your exam costs you a rescheduling fee, maybe $100 or so. Failing the real exam costs you the full $520 fee, plus a mandatory 45-day waiting period before you can retake it, plus the emotional devastation, plus the lost wages because you can't start your job as a pharmacist yet.
It's always cheaper to reschedule than it is to fail.
Always. If you fail the pre-NAPLEX, trust the data. You are not ready. Use that as a gift, a warning sign to postpone and fix your weak areas.
And what if the worst case scenario happens? You take the real exam and you get that email and you've failed. What happens next?
First, you have to acknowledge that it's devastating. It can feel like your entire world is ending, but it isn't. Operationally, what happens is you receive a candidate performance report.
And what's on that report?
It breaks down your performance in each of the content domains. It gives you a level from 1 to 4. Level 1 is far below competency, and level 4 is exceeds competency.
So it's basically a roadmap for your next attempt.
It's a perfect diagnostic tool. If you see you got level 3s in all the clinical areas, but you got a big fat level 1 in pharmaceutical calculations, well, you know exactly why you failed. You missed the free throw points, you go back, you hammer math problems every single day for those 45 days, and you go back in and you pass.
But there is a limit on attempts, right? It's not infinite.
Correct. Typically, it's 3 attempts within any 12-month period and a total of 5 attempts in your lifetime. You should always check the specific rules for your state board of pharmacy because they can have slight variations. But the point is, you don't have unlimited tries. You need to respect the exam and each attempt.
As we start to wrap up, I want to zoom out a little. We've talked so much about the tactics, the stress, the money, the blueprint. But there is a bigger picture. Why does this brutal exam even exist? Is it just a form of professional hazing?
It can really feel like hazing when you're going through it. But you have to remember what this is all for. What lies on the other side? A licensed pharmacist is the final safety check in the entire healthcare system.
The last line of defense.
Absolutely. Doctors are human, they make mistakes. Nurses are human, they make mistakes. Computer systems have glitches and make mistakes. The pharmacist is supposed to be the safety net that catches those errors before they reach the patient.
The buck stops here, as they say.
It literally does. If you miss a critical drug interaction on the NAPLEX, you lose 1 point on a test. If you miss that same drug interaction in your community pharmacy a month later, someone could have a stroke or a major bleed or a seizure.
So the exam is difficult because the job itself is incredibly high stakes.
The job is dangerous. The potential for harm is enormous. And that's a heavy thought, but I actually think it can be a really powerful, motivating one when you're studying. When it's 2 a.m. and you're exhausted and staring at another page of antibiotic spectra, don't think to yourself, I need to learn this for the test. Think, I need to learn this so I don't hurt someone one day. When you frame your studying through the lens of patient safety, the information sticks better. It stops being abstract data points, and it starts being your future professional responsibility.
You're not just studying to pass a test, you're studying to be a pharmacist.
You're practicing for your career. The discipline you build studying for this exam, the intense attention to detail, the mental endurance, the ability to synthesize dozens of data points into a single decision, those are the exact same skills you will use every single day of your professional life. This isn't just some arbitrary barrier they put in your way. It's the first step of your actual career.
That's a really fantastic perspective shift. So let's summarize the mission plan. Start early, ideally 6 months out.
Own the math. Practice it daily.
Use active recall methods. Cue banks, teach back spaced repetition, not just passive reading and video watching.
And respect the new clinical blueprint. Domain 3 is king. Live in the patient cases.
And on test day, keep your head in the game. Manage your time, take your breaks, and don't let the ghost questions haunt you.
And finally, believe in the work you've put in. If you've done the reps in the gym, you'll be able to lift the weight on game day. Trust your preparation.
For all the P4s and recent grads out there listening to this, probably with a knot in your stomach, you survived organic chemistry, you survived therapeutics, you survived your rotations. You can survive this.
You absolutely can. You've got this. Good luck.
Thanks for listening to The Deep Dive. We'll see you next time.